Hey everyone, Derek Hines here. Welcome to the podcast where I'll share with you the patterns, insights, research, and technologies that we use in my own pain and performance practice to help people improve their health, speed their healing, and increase their longevity. Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoy it. Nick Stewart, welcome to the Pain and Performance Podcast, my man.
Yes. I don't think I've ever been excited to talk about pain other than when I was in it about 15 years ago so badly that I was like, I can't find a doctor to hear me. But other than that, this is the first time in over a decade that I'm like, well, first of all, people who are tuning in should know that this was supposed to happen like a month ago, I think. And here's the kicker. I couldn't make it because of pain.
Oh, no.
I was like, this is ironic. I've been really looking forward to meeting Dr. Hines, talking about pain, talking about sleep. Oh my God, I all I could do was get to my computer. And people, I'm sure your audience knows, like, you're in that much pain. I had COVID, and basically I had a slightly herniated disc. I don't know how much more herniated it needs to get before like they cut it off. Like really, I'm just like, how much? I could barely get to the computer, send the one email to be like, I need you to cancel every single thing. And you know what it was? That right when I was getting better, I got a cough, and it was gyrating my spine. This is why I love being on this show. I can actually talk about this stuff, right? It's gyrating my spine through the night. Actually, I didn't sleep. I think I slept like 45 minutes or so. And after that 45 minutes, when I woke up, I was done.
This could not be a better place to start. Let's dive into that. So in your kind of understanding of like the science around sleep and then what that does to the body, what do you think was happening inside? We know, like, so let's say you had that disc herniation. That probably wasn't new, right? That was probably in there already.
It's been there for 15 years, easily.
Yeah. So we add some coughing. We can dive into the mechanics of that. You're probably firing some accessory muscles and continuing to recompress that disc. And if there's anything kind of pushing out, that's probably getting inflamed and irritated. But if you would stack on top of that a couple nights of really poor sleep, what's the snowball effect? What's happening inside?
It would just be more painful, I think, is really the answer there. I've got notes, and like I said, I'm actually reading the show. I literally have brought physical products to show folks at home. I just wish you could see this. I'm surrounded. But I think but some of it's really basic, which is like, there's really no contesting that if you lose sleep, you will be in more pain.
Yeah.
And I think the easiest way to think about it is like, sleep is like a painkiller injection. And so if you don't get it, you're without your meds.
That's a good, I had this conversation yesterday with one of my patients, and we were working, and she was telling me how much better she's sleeping. And like, obviously she wasn't sleeping well because she couldn't get into a good position. So we're talking about like, you know, as we've gotten the tissue healing, she's sleeping a lot better. And she's like, now it seems like every week I'm just like taking leaps and strides. She was like, you know, you can do everything to get better and heal and do all this stuff. But if you still sleep like crap, you feel like crap. You can do everything right, but if you don't have sleep there, everything is still bad. That seems to land. I'm with you. Like, you can eat right, you can exercise, you can have good relationships, but if you sleep poorly, you still feel really badly.
Yeah, I always say to people, I'm like, it's really simple to think about. It's like, okay, you've been working out for months. You miss a workout on Tuesday night. And then you pick up on Wednesday, and then you pick up on Friday, and you keep going. What happens? Not much. Do you really lose strength? Do you lose cardiovascular metric conditioning? Not really. Fine, how about eating? Well, we eat all the time. What if I missed a meal? How would I be the next day? Probably healthier. In the United States, I'd probably be doing better if I had skipped that meal, right? And then you just be like, okay, what if you just missed a night of sleep? It's like, you're in trouble. You know, you're gonna have some challenges.
Have you seen this like thing going around online where kids are trying to like stay up as long as possible? I saw one kid, I want to say it was like 6 or 7 days, something like that. Is that right?
Oh, there was a kid a little while ago that went past, I think, 8 days, maybe got close to 11, and then like his doctor like legit told him like, You have so screwed yourself up. This will take years to fix.
Yeah, I was about to, that was going to be my question. Like, can you, how long-term implications come from that? Like, it's kind of like you said, like if you don't,
You end up like me. You end up showing up like a weirdo and doing weird stuff.
yeah, give us your sleep history.
Yeah,
Give me
let me give you
the
the
deep
triple. Let
dive.
me give you the triple introduction. Number one, today is the first day that I am on a show where I like, I checked on most of your audiences from the United States, but I also was like, what's the color for chronic pain? It's purple. I was like, I'm bringing the purple glasses out.
Yes.
And then I think this is something that people, hopefully your audience can agree with, and this is how I felt about sleep. I'm like, pain and sleep don't give a beep about red states, blue states, leftists, Republicans. They don't care. It's an equal opportunity destroyer, you know? And so, like,
Accurate.
once I got going into the sleep thing, I was like, man, it kind of changed the way I saw politics a little bit. And so I also, today, I was like, I'm going to don the purple US shirt to be like,
That
yes,
doesn't get
folks,
back.
we need to get into politics. We should take care of each other.
It's
So,
our common enemy.
yeah. And then the second thing is, this is the first day where I've done this again. So I'm like stoked this is happening. I don't know if you can tell, but I am on like a mat and I am totally standing.
And if y'all are just listening to this, Nick is showing us his steps in.
Oh, yeah. If you're not watching, I'm literally doing cardio. And so I was like, oh, yeah, I got to be standing for the pain podcast. But I got to tell you, I have mixed feelings about it. Like, I've seen my bosses in corporate America stand like all day. And then I've tried like half a day. And I'm like, damn, like my legs are killing me. Like, I'm really hurting. But this was like sort of the tryout today, and this is the orange sun background. I hope you like it.
Yeah, it looks fantastic. Yeah, standing's not free, right? I think we talk about like sitting's the new smoking and all that stuff. And
oh yeah, I remember that.
But to change that and be on your feet all day brings a whole other host of problems.
Really,
in terms of just like, do you have the strength to do it? Do we have the muscular endurance to do it? And I've had a lot of patients who go to it and they say the same thing. They're like, man, this is hard work. And I'm like, yes, it is hard work. That's the idea, that you're using this stuff in a way that's challenges your body. But one of that kind of brings this to the sleep, I guess, realm. So we spent a month in Europe last summer. I was speaking at some conferences, and you walk everywhere, right? Mm-hmm. And at the conferences we were at, I can't be one of those people that sits in a conference all day. So we would stand at the back, and me and my fiance were there. By the time y'all hear this, me and my wife, So we were standing and walking all day. And one of the things that we both said is like, I am a traditional 6 to 7 hour a night sleeper.
Okay.
At the end of the day, every single night, despite it being no air condition, I know we're spoiled in America, rest of the world, catch up with that one. Air condition is a very nice little spoil that y'all
love my have. Central air. What up?
Even without that, even with an uncomfortable bed, no cooling environment. So a lot of things not optimal in our sleep environment. We still both were saying, I slept absolutely amazing.
Because you guys have walked all day.
Yeah.
Yeah, it totally reminds me of, I was networking with new people and I met this guy, and him and his wife, they're basically modern accidental nomads. They move like every 3 or 4 months, but they're hikers. And he's like, oh, we sleep like babies. Oh, I've never had a problem with sleep. And then the more I got to know him, they hike 4 hours every day. Guys, if you hike 4 hours every day, you're going to sleep amazing. You know? But he sort of looked at me like, I don't have a problem with sleep. What do you mean? It's just normal. And then later I'm like, no, bro, it's because you're hiking for 4 hours. This is a significant thing, both mentally and physically, that is working to get you to sleep nice and smoothly,
Yeah. I have a lot of my family in South Louisiana that farm, and, they're working on the farm and they're outside and they're doing stuff. And I was talking to one of my uncles about the podcast. I'm like, yeah, we're doing a sleep podcast. And he said, I think anyone who has severe insomnia should come work on the farm for a couple weeks. He was like, you're outside, you're in the sun, you're doing heavy work, you're sweating, you're doing all of this activity and moving around, and you're seeing sunrise and sunset. And he was like, I have yet to really meet very many farmers who have trouble sleeping. And I was like, it sounds right to me that you are checking a lot of boxes in that environment that improves sleep. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I immediately think about the hormone adenosine, right? Most people are like, sleep, oh, melatonin. And I'm like, no, no, no. In my book, Sleep Fitness, that I came on the show to talk about a little bit, we'll integrate it some here and there. That's the one that people need to know. That's the one that you're looking to accumulate and get going and get lasting longer and longer. So you asked about what happened with me. I don't know. I might have stayed awake on that farm. So in 2018, so first of all, for those of you who don't know, I'm sure you've read in the thing, I'm a holistic sleep and now more of a burnout specialist. I both write and do one-on-one training with people. And the holistic part is that I'm sort of this weird, unconventional mix of multiple things. But one of the 3 or 4 things is that I have had an insane personal experience with sleeplessness. So in 2018, in August, I stopped sleeping. And 17 days went by before I ever nodded off for a few hours. Now, this is because of terrible, improper, shaking my head medical care stuff that shouldn't have happened. And I just remember calling them being like, I feel like my mornings are starting to erode and the nights are starting to erode. Something seems wrong. And they're like, well, great. We'll see you on the 22nd. I think I need to see someone like soon. That's great. Yeah, we'll see you at 2:30. And I remember literally with my paper calendar being like, that's 17 days away. And so I, up until just recently, thought that I was the Guinness World Record holder, although the Guinness World Record folks stopped tracking it because they learned a long time ago in the 90s, whoa, this is so bad that we can't be supporting it. And my
Yeah.
friend finally sent me this sleep technologist from Canada, sent me an article, and it said that this guy, I think in 96 or something, before they closed the record, had 18. So I was like, oh, good. Oh, I'm not the world's worst suffering, painful thing. But to go into part of your earlier question and to jump into there, I should also say that, and then I had 2.5 years of insomnia after that before I ever walked out of it. But in that 17 days, I don't know, maybe by the 5th day or sooner, my hamstrings were like steel rods. So flexibility, clearly, whatever juices and keeps us limber, you probably know the terms for what keeps us loose and sort of like what yoga does to us.
Right.
That's gone. Sleep is clearly producing it
Yeah.
because it was gone, man. I just remember holding on to my couch for dear life. And I had this video with this CEO from, actually, it's a product that I'll share with your listeners too. And we did this video together, and I was like, you know what? People are hating on binge watching shows. But to be honest with you, when you have insomnia and you can't sleep, Netflix saved my life. Like, it got me to that 17th day where I went and saw the lady and was like, I haven't slept in 17 days. She didn't even believe, I don't think she believed me.
I'm sure not.
No.
We're all, I feel like I hear it from patients. They're like, oh, I didn't sleep at all last night. And I'm like, it's like when somebody comes in and tells you they have a 10 out of 10 pain. You're like, if you had a 10 out of 10 pain, you would be on the verge of passing out in the next minute.
Be unrecognizable.
But it's to get the point across, right? We're trying to kind of explain that to a degree of hey, I slept really badly. I want to get into a lot of the kind of science and research around sleep with you. But during that time, what were you doing? Were you taking sleep meds? Or was it sleep meds that were causing some of it? What was going on there?
So I didn't. First of all, I saw multiple medical professionals after, and nobody was like, oh, you had rebound insomnia. You were taking a medication that was helping. I have neuropathy in my left foot. And so, I don't know, 20-something years ago, they gave me a muscle relaxer because I was like, yo, at night, man, it's like someone's tickling my foot. And the doctor's like, yeah, whatever. I'm like, give me your foot right now. And I would start tickling his foot. He's like, cut it out. I was like, okay, but just imagine it never stops. So they gave me a muscle relaxer. I had been on it for 15 years or whatever. And then I saw a new provider and she was very shamey and not helpful. I had to basically they were like, don't sell this on the streets. I was like, can you sell this on the streets? What's going on? So there was that whole component. And then once I got to that point and I was stuck, and was like, I actually have to wait. The best that I can do in terms of some of my memories from it is just holding on to my living room couch for dear life. Because at some point I go into borderline or complete psychosis. Actually, I tell people, if you've seen Doctor Strange, you've seen Doctor Strange, the second movie, he does this thing where he takes Loki and he sends him through this like chute that has no bottom or top. It just keeps going. He just keeps falling indefinitely while Doctor Strange is dealing with other stuff. And I'm like, that's what, maybe you can relate to this. There's times in your life where you get mad, and that energy fuels you to be able to do something, to like overcome something, to take action and do something. Sometimes it's extraordinary. I mean, it's like some of the most amazing turnarounds in my life have come because I'm like, I'm really mad about this situation. In those 17 nights of sleeplessness, I couldn't even get mad. I try. I remember thinking like I should get angry about this, and like I couldn't pull on an emotion. It was just totally wiped out. That the legs were totally like they just hurt like heck. And oh, I think the other thing that I can remember is, and this is important too for people who have pain, and when we'll talk about the science of the deep sleep stage, was like, oh, I had like irrational thoughts of like I was terrified of my cell phone. Like I have a clear memory of it like, being in a desk drawer and just like walking by it and being like oh my God, the mail was piled up. I might not have gone out for food for like 7 to 10 days. Like that, like I just remember like it was everything to do. And I said the last thing I can kind of remember is that, and it was naive of me, and I realize now, oh my God, if I had known this one thing, it might have shaved off a year and a half or two of insomnia. In the mornings, I would close all the blinds in this room because it kind of hurt. The sun,
Yeah.
the light actually hurts your eyes. But the second thing is I was thinking like, I'm trying to tell my body like, it's dark, we should sleep. Well, now, all these years later, for folks, and this is good, this is helpful because if you get morning light, and you already know this, you're going to get exposed to serotonin production is going to start, and that hangs out until nighttime and then feeds into the melatonin that helps your REM sleep. So I wasn't getting any of that part,
Yeah.
right? So like if you start the day before 10 and hit the sun for 20 to 30 minutes, it will send a message to your brain about you going to sleep later at night. It's amazing. I mean, it's like
Right.
I don't understand why that happens, but it does. And that
You'll
I think alone, if someone said, "Hey, Nick, listen, I don't care how bad it gets, get out of the house, get in the sun for half an hour before 10 a.m. every day," I think a year or two of insomnia would have been gone.
Are you familiar with Rick Rubin, the producer?
Yeah.
Have you heard his story
No.
about insomnia? So
No.
he had severe insomnia and a multitude of health issues, tons of health issues, overweight, cardiovascular issues, this whole gamut of things. And he started working with a couple of doctors. He's like, look, I've got all the money in the world. I got to get healthy. And the first thing they started telling him to do was, look, you've got to get sleep under control, no matter how much you slept, no matter if you didn't go to bed at all. Every single morning when you get up, I need you outside for a half hour.
Smart.
And he tells the story of what this did over, it was like a 30-day cycle. He was like, I would go to sleep at 5 a.m., but I would get up at 10 and I'd go outside for a half hour. And then I started going to sleep at 3 a.m. and I'd get up at 9 and go to outside for a half hour. And then it's midnight and I'm falling asleep and I'm getting up at 7 and I'm outside for a half hour. And then it's 10 o'clock and I'm waking up at 6 and I'm outside for a half hour. And it was like, it was just over a month. My body just, boom, starts to creep into this optimal phase. And you listen to him and see him now and he's like, has lost tons of weight and he's healthy and stuff.
Because he was big.
He was.
Beard and...
He has turned his health around in a major way. But when he talks about it, it was, you've got to get sleep under control. And the number one thing they said was, like, before we start changing all that, I don't even care what you do before bed. I don't care any of that stuff. Get outside first thing. Would you stand by that? Do you think that's one of the lead dominoes of, hey, let's get you in sunlight, get you outside in that first half hour of the day?
I think it would have shaved a year and a half or two right off my insomnia. It would
That's
have been.
amazing.
I think it would have been gone. Should we bring in a product?
Yeah, let's see what you got.
Since you talk about technology, so I've talked to this woman in Australia one time, and so I was going exactly where they were going with Rick, which was like, I got to get this lady walking in the sun in the morning, but she described the landscape or something. She didn't have light, so I started telling her about these lights, these 10,000 lux lights. So for you guys that don't know, if you're watching, here's this cool one that's kind of rare. You can check them out on Amazon. And I have a whole bunch of different ones. And this one is cool because it does the white light, the medium blue, and then the pure blue light, which if you look up any of the research on that, if you use that in conjunction with a morning walk in the sun, that really starts to expedite you setting a circadian rhythm timing of waking up and going to sleep. So here's my challenge for anyone who, when this airs, if you message me and send me a picture with my book Sleep Fitness, I will mail this to you for free. I will give this to you.
Love
And the
it.
cool thing is, even if you don't have sleep problems, you can actually turn this around and use it for other reasons. Like after a while, I was like, what am I going to do with all these lights? Well, they make you really focused and give you energy. So anyways, the lady in Australia finally sends me this message, and she's like, I finally got one of those lights. Now, she was waking up in the morning in the darkness. She would drink, I think it was like a Red Bull or something like that. And then I can't remember how many minutes later it would be a coffee. Like she layered in caffeine over like a 2.5 hour period. I get this message from her and she's like, I got the light and I'm totally good. I had like this weird like month and a half where like one thing someone would apply and they would come back to me 4 weeks later and be like, like, Nick, I have energy during the day, but I get home with the kids and I'm still like engaged. Like this is amazing. And I'm like, oh, cool. Like that's interesting. Like wow. So yeah, I think the light thing is huge. I've used it before. I think like I've used it subsequently after as a tool. I've used it with clients who have circadian rhythm issues where it's like one guy was just broken. Like, and I would luckily like about 2 months before that, I kind of was like, oh, I'm going to test this like version of like I'm a tinkerer. Like I'm always sort of testing, and some people are always like, you must sleep amazing, and I'm like, well, sometimes not really because I'm testing something that doesn't work. Like so it's not good. So, but yeah, so that's definitely a replacement. So if you're like, there's no way you're getting out to get the sun because you get up way too early. It's like
Yeah.
5 before you get up or
Hmm.
something. Dude, jump on Amazon, find a 10,000 lux light or higher, and do a little research online and just put it to the side and read for 20 to 30 minutes. And you'll notice a difference, man. This lady suffered for like 15 years. And then it was like she got the light. Then 3.5 weeks later, it was like, oh, I'm fine.
I have a timer on my light next to my bed. Now I need to go look at what lux it is. It kind of has like a little panel. I don't think it's a 10,000 lux one, but I work out in the morning and I don't use like an alarm. My light turns on at
Yeah.
5. And naturally, I wake up. I have a dog named Duke, and he thinks that it is his job to make sure that I wake up in the morning. So when our light comes on, he comes and he like gets on the side of my bed and he like pats me and stuff and like licks me, and I roll over, and my same thing happens every day. I'm not going to work out today, and I roll back over and the light's sitting there on, and about 2 minutes later I roll back over and I'm like, all right, I'm ready to go. And then he goes back to bed. He's like, okay, I did my job. I get to go back to sleep. You go work out and I'll meet you in an hour for food, right? But kind of what you've said, the transition to this early morning workout, I always fought it. I was like, I'm going to feel bad. I'm going to be tired. 100% the opposite. Energy's better. And I work out. So I wake up to the light, work out, and then I come home, have a couple of things, and then our morning routine is Sarah and I sit outside and watch the sunrise before we both head off to kind of get the day started. I go see patients and she's got all her work to do. So it's this like amazing, like gradual, like building of energy and hormones. I don't drink coffee for that first like 2 hours, and that's just because I'm doing other things. I love coffee. We brew our own coffee and roast our beans
Is
and all
someone
that stuff.
vacuuming in your house?
They are.
I have great news. I just got an article the other day which said you totally become less anxious and sleep better when you clean up your environment. So
Sorry if that's loud to
up here
everyone. I
is I'm
apologize.
gonna sleep well tonight is what I'm hearing in the background. This is literally true. I had seen this research before, but they just kind of like mainstreamed it a little bit. And my mother cleaned houses for a living, and I was like, "Hey, mom, here you gotta check this document out." You know?
So if we're kind of breaking some of that stuff down, you talked about the adenosine kind of process in the body. Let's go into that because I don't think people quite understand how this serves us to be able to kind of get our hormonal system up and running, to get us kind of activated and give us energy. Take us through some of that, if you will.
Yeah, sure. I think one is although maybe you'd like a little extra, you start the day with a little kick of cortisol. And this is something that like at some point I need to do an article about. I'm not sure, I mean, you've probably seen there's the whole like vitamin and mineral world, supplement world, and there's this really strong like this is an anti-cortisol medic, right? There's all this anti-cortisol stuff, and I'm like, whoa, like cortisol's like really helpful in the morning. In fact, actually, a lot of the people that I work with, except minus ones who have like immediate anxiety in the morning, I have moved their meditations from the morning to the afternoon because I'm like, you're actually kind of curbing back the natural sort of, I guess, like the natural body's caffeine to kick up and go.
Yeah.
It's that part of you that's like, I got to get out of bed and go. So there's that part. And then the adenosine part that you're asking about is helpful to think about because I really like the way they describe it's like one of the rare things the sleep industry has described well. Sleep pressure. I'm like, thank you. Like, that makes sense. Okay, the more that this thing keeps going, the more pressure there is on me to fall asleep. It's like him being like, hey, come out to the farm. He just didn't know how to say, like, hey, dude, you come live farm life. By day 3, you're in adenosine and your sleep pressure will be so extreme, you'll probably just fall over. And that is one of the thoughts I had during that 17 days, which was like, just walk and someday I'll totally probably pass out. Luckily, I never had to. But yeah, I mean, you're looking to, and I think that's some of the work that I do now is like, are we maximizing your day to ensure that you have maximized your sleep pressure by the end of the night, right? And this is where I think one of the things that sets me apart from most of my peers is this thing that I wrote about in the second chapter of the book that I didn't realize was going to be such a like trigger for people. I didn't realize that basically almost no book on the Amazon bookshelf has this, which is basically like sleep is like a custom deal. Like I remember like I don't know if it was like 4 months I was on LinkedIn and this person asked this question like over the last 2 months, what are the common things you see across some of the people you've worked with? And then I thought about it and I was like nothing. Nothing. But you're always starting with someone that has something radically different. The last guy I talked to had restless leg syndrome. The other person had night terrors. The person before that had a broken circadian rhythm. There's a guy I'm working with now, and this is where it's cool, and this is where I like really get excited for people, is I talked to him, he's a friend of mine, about a year ago about it, and he kind of just like put his tail between his legs and disappeared. Well, during the course of the year, something happened where his girlfriend or saying he was snoring, something's going on, and he got tested for sleep apnea. And so for folks that don't know what that is, it's when your windpipe closes off due to various reasons for different people, and you stop breathing in the night. And you can literally die. My friend died of complications of bad sleep apnea, insomnia, and cardiovascular trigger. And it was probably a heart attack, and he died at 40. This guy was like going to the gym and like kicking my butt. Like it's a serious thing. So that woke him up, and that did something to him where he like kind of oh, I know what it was. And this happens with people who late stage sleep apnea and then they get the mask and it forces the air. Their first thing that they'll tell me is like, oh my God, Nick, I haven't felt that good in 20 years. Like this was amazing, right? Like, So clearly, like, they're going through the phases for long enough at the right amount of time, and the way they feel blew his mind enough that he came back to me and was like, "Okay, I'm ready to do it." Because one of the things I tell people is like, you can be like, "Yeah," and this is a lot of people. Yeah, like I kind of like some, I don't know, in college I didn't sleep that well, and like so I got some sheets and like a couple of like gel pillows or whatever, but it didn't do anything, and it's been like that, since then. That's like 20 years, and I'm just like, you've given up on a lot more than you think you have. So the guy I'm working with now, which is really cool, is that there's parts of his sleep where they're fine, but I'm like, do you want it to be better? And I've like literally watched his face come to like a conclusion that it's okay for him to be like, yeah, actually, can we build part of this little mini plan to hit something that would make that better? Would be great. And then that kind of moved it over. And I was saying how like I had this weird stretch where I was like, I hadn't coached in a while. So like again, with the holistic part, I got started with it as a Fortune 500 performance trainer for like really competitive internships at these companies. And so I sort of like used part of that model with him. And so when I was working with him, I'm like, okay, yeah, we can like totally do that. And so I was talking to a psychiatrist the other day and I told her, I was like, a lot of people don't like your people. She's like, no, no, they don't. And I was like, but don't worry, I always stick up for you. She was like the one good person out of like 15 that like actually, but I said to her, I was like, if I said to you a year ago when this started, that part of the time that I would spend my energy and my voice on is just convincing people it's okay for you to be okay with being like, you know what? I wouldn't mind having an energetically more pleasurable life, a more engaging life. And I tell people, I'm like, they'll be like, yeah, I don't know, I think I should switch jobs. And I'm like, bro, nothing I teach you will help you switch jobs. Nothing, you know? Like, he came back 2 weeks later and I still had to remind him, like, we're not working on your job change. That's a different coach. Like, that's a different thing altogether. But what we sort of realized after I worked with a few people was that in part because of these layers that I have, and because I had 17 nights and then 2.5 years, and at the end of that 2.5 years, Derek, I sat in my living room and I had one of those moments where I went, it's been 2.5 years. I've seen this many cognitive behavioral therapists, this many psychiatrists, this many doctors, and there's been no change. No one has taught me anything about sleep. No one. No one is coming to save me. And that's when I doubled down on a lot of my past, which included some time in a PhD program doing research, which I'm sure you're probably sick of, you know. But it did give me an ability to grab for some of that really dry, raw, totally bizarre written stuff where you're like, what is this even saying? And I can kind of parse through it and be like, well, it's actually saying this. And actually, if you tie it to this, we could probably integrate it into your first plan of sort of taking back your sleep, actually do that. And so that's sort of like how things got started for me, was just like I just started like just collecting every single book, every single article, every single thing endlessly, you know.
What
And
was
that journey kept going.
what was the I think a lot of that probably kind of created this giant kind of mash of information around sleep and stuff, but do you remember anything that you kind of do an aha moment during that? Was there like okay, this is a thread that I gonna pull on and this is really giving me kind of hope?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a little anticlimactic. At some point, I realized I had another one of those like moments where I'm like, what's going on? I don't know how long it was, but it had been a while. Stacks of books, papers everywhere. And I realized, and I've said this to multiple clients, I'll have clients who are like, they'll want to tell me all about the sleep stages and they want to tell me all about that. No, and I'm like, oh, that's really cool. You know all that stuff. Are you sleeping at night? Oh, you're not. So what good is it? So like chapter 9 of my book is stop trying to learn about it. So for clients, when I work with them for 6 weeks, I'm like, I want you to stop learning about anything that has to do with sleep. Stop it. I will take on specific things that are niche that we need to figure out, but you need to stop. It's not helping. And so I got to that moment in my own life where I was like, wow, you can know a lot. And at that point, I knew probably more than I do now. And I was like, I'm not sleeping any better. And so I did kind of like a switch of research and pivoted and was like, I need everything on change. So then I went hyper into what are the most effective ways to change. And then I started demoing that. And so the sort of not the anticlimactic part of it is that I started developing these, what I would call triple layered mini plans. And based on all the piles of research, I whipped it down to like 3 books. And this is what I call a habit lock, because once you set it, you locked in. I had the first two, which was start tiny.
Hmm.
I did a newsletter about this a while back, and I thought everyone's gonna be bored with this. I was like, I think it was like something like "How to Get Past the Castle Guards" was the title. I was like, this is so cheesy. No one's gonna read this. This is a weird week, and it like circulated like crazy. And so I tell people, I'm like, it like your brain, your mind, it's like a castle with castle guards, and if they can see you coming in any way, shape, or form, they are gonna knock you out. You're not going to do that workout in the morning, Derek. Like you're like it's not going to happen. It's too much. And so there was enough research that I was like, ooh, that person, that research, that okay, starting tiny and keeping tiny until it builds is a sort of way to get around the mechanics of the brain. Let's call that like lock component number one. And then the second one, which was a really cool study, and I think people were just blown away. I think we're still going to be, it's going to be a while till we catch up to this study,
Hmm.
which is they took a bunch of college students and said, okay, Derek, your group is going to work out on Thursdays at 3 and Tuesdays at 3. This other group of 50 of you, you work out whenever. Prediction being, group with the dead schedule with the exact times was going to clearly show up more, outperform the other group, and it was going to be obvious that like having these set times on totally came back opposite. Group that had no set schedule, when the day fell apart and they were like, "Oh man, it's like 6:30. I could go to the gym. I'm going to go to the gym." They would go to the gym. So the other part of it is that when you're trying to initiate change and you're trying to get better at sleep or whatever it doesn't even matter what it is in your life. If you give the sort of flexibility of the time, I taught this to my friend who had to like then teach it to me. But it was like one night where I was like, "Oh my god, I didn't do my workout this morning," and she was like, "Nick, you could do a push up right now,
Yeah.
and it will count." And I was like, "Whoa!" And so for about 2.5 months or so, things started to get better, slowly but surely. But academic nerds love to call, as you know, things that are just normal. They have to the word. So gamification. I used gamification by taking a paper calendar with little post-its, and so each day that I would do the three specific either activities. So in my model, I break it down into three. So like CBTI, which is the only endorsed and like certified one, it's missing a bunch of stuff. It has people doing stuff that's painful. Like it's weird. One of the things is that I break it into three things. I call it three dials. There's sort of the mind, your beliefs, and your thoughts. Then there's the activities that you physically or mentally do. And then CBTI doesn't have any of this, and I have like tons of research that shows this is very effective, which is what's the physical space around you like? And that's actually a lot of what I thought about when I thought about your audience when we're talking about pain is actually the first thing I'd start working on is upgrading every single thing in my bedroom. I would be upgrading each month until this happened. Me. I woke up one morning and my body was like, we're good. I was like, yeah, but we got to get going because we have to hit the thing and I have an appointment. And my body was like, nah, this mattress topper, these sheets, these pillows, the color of the room, the fact you've moved the bed away from the door, the smell of lavender coming through the diffuse. Like, we're going nowhere. I was like, I went too far, Derek. So I had to turn it back a little bit. And that's basically what I did to myself. And then I do with clients, which is we kind of assess where are you in terms of the environment that's around you. And I think this is a great entryway for people who have pain and want to sleep better is make no apologies, especially if you're American. We're materialists. I call it the all-American materialist solution. Start upgrading your stuff. Put a little money aside, learn about it. I mean, you can hire someone like me for an hour to basically be like, this product, this product, this product. I tested over 100 of them. Almost none of them worked.
Look, one of the things that I swear by, and I've told many people, probably 4 or 5 years ago, we got one of the first chili pads, like not the first chili pads, but one of the earlier versions of it. Now they've gotten much better. And to set the environment of the temperature of your bed was a absolute game changer. Like getting in your sheets and it's cozy and feels amazing and it stays like that all night. I was like, done. This is the best money we've spent in ages. A firm believer in like stepping up that environment. Something that you brought to mind about like kind of almost knowing too much and studying too much about sleep is pain. I find this a lot is like you need to know enough to understand and not be afraid of it, not be afraid of like, let's say pain, and kind of understand what those signals are, that it's just your body trying to communicate. It's not that you're damaged, none of that stuff. But you need to know that and then almost like be able to set it aside, because if you know that and you focus so much on it and you're reading about it and you're studying it, like you're almost giving your brain this target to shoot at. And so your brain's like, oh, we're studying about pain. We're looking at pain. Like, let's tell him about that pain in the shoulder that we felt. And let's tell him about the pain in the neck. And, oh, man, that nerve signal we got, that must have been pain too. Let's throw that out there. And it's like, you need to know enough so that you can set it aside and, go about your life and focus on all the good things and relationships and like goals and all that stuff. I feel like sleep might be the same. Like
exactly. That's how I'll give the ending of the book away. In the closing paragraph, I'm like, it's my genuine hope that someday years will go by and you'll stumble in the living room and see this weird book and be like, oh yeah, I kind of remember this. That was that weird dude with the glasses and the hat. I don't know, whatever, it's useless.
Yeah.
And it's gone. And then actually recently there's another version of it, and this is helpful for people, I think. This is realistic, and actually it's turned out to be a great thing, and I'll share a couple hacks. I tell people that there's going to be some things that you do and you learn and you do them for the rest of your life. You don't know what they are. It's like those NASA ships where it's like that central one goes up and then the little pieces go off over time. I was like, other things will just fade away. So like one great thing that I wish I put down the two. I have three, but I put down the two things that had to do with pain, that reduced pain substantially and improved my sleep substantially, that I wish my doctors had told me 20 years ago when I was like, dude, something's wrong with my back. I can't even sit in a chair. Like I'm in trouble. Like I was on pain meds like crazy. I was writhing. I had tendonitis. Like everything was bad. It was really bad. One, cryotherapy. Have you done it?
We do a lot of cryotherapy in my office. We probably have, I don't know, let's say 150 patients a week that do cryotherapy with us.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
So if you haven't already told your audience, find it. If it's like 40 minutes away, it still might be worth the drive. It is like there's not an equal that I have ever walked into something. Is it 3 minutes? 3 minutes?
Mm-hmm.
3 minutes?
Yeah.
Walked out and been like, my lower sciatica or my lower back is totally fine. Like I'm good. Like I'm totally good, which totally means I sleep better. And for folks that are like picking up on this little theme where Dr. Hines was like, yeah, like I had the chili pad. One of the things to help you sleep better is to drop the temperature both in your body and in the environment around you. And so that's why cryotherapy is one hack that I'm like, it's just if it's 40 minutes within driving distance, check it out. If you have pain, it's amazing. The second thing, and this is one of those things where until recently I realized, oh my God, I'm going to do this for the rest of my life. I started this newsletter on LinkedIn and I release it every 2 weeks. It's on energy and sleep. And I was like, I think I want to interview this guy, James, that I've kind of met, who's from the UK, but he lives in Bali and he's sort of like a wild jungle man and he's like in the tubs. And I'm like, I want to ask him about, like hot therapy and cold therapy. And so I was like expecting this article that would be like very like, these are all the benefits. Here's all the benefits. And I put a chart in there so it was there. But I walked out with him and being influenced by him. I think I ended up changing the title to like hacking a personality or hacking a person or something. And so I was like inspired enough that I was like, I got to figure out how to get an ice bucket. I hate this guy's living in this ice bucket thing. I got to get in this. Like this seems amazing. Like I should do this. Long story short, my father figured out, dude, put it in your basement. We'll run the tubes through the little window. So for the last, I don't know, 2.5, 3 months, I've had my first ice bucket. And just as people price these, mine was like $99. It just died the other day. And this is when I realized, oh my God, I'm going to do this for the rest of my life. I'm someone who has chronic pain. And so for me, jumping in an ice bucket in my basement for 10 minutes is a game changer. And it also helps my sleep. And it also makes you resilient against depression, which is like, I don't know, man. Like, I've done some podcasts where we talk about suicide and depression, and I'm like, I don't know. Like, insomnia, I might take over depression. It's so bad, you know? So I would say definitely those two right at the cryotherapy. And if you can't do that, you should be checking out on Amazon or wherever ice buckets and getting in them. I found that they just drop my anxiety as well. Calm me down.
One of the biggest things we get from patients on doing cryotherapy is the improvements in sleep. They all we have a lot of our patients track their sleep. I want to ask you that question. When we're on transformation, I'm like, look, I don't know how much you're improving unless you're tracking it. And you might come in and say, I think it's about the same. And we look and you're sleeping 30% better. And you're like, okay, let's measure it. I'm a data guy, right?
Yep.
So they all come back and we see the days that they do cryotherapy, the day after, their sleep is always elevated in the early stages of this. And the depression factor, I had no idea about this when we added cryotherapy some 8 years ago to our practice. We switched over the type of cryotherapy we were doing. We switched from a nitrogen based to electric, much better machine, really effective. You're breathing the cold air in, your whole body's in there. And it took us about 3 months to switch over. And I had patients come back and they said, I had no idea how much this was affecting me mentally. They were like, I haven't taken an antidepressant in a year. And since I've been off for the last 2 months, 3 months, they were like, these little feelings are coming back. And I didn't even realize they had been gone. They were like, please get it back up and running. No clue. And that has been a consistent theme over the last let's say 3 or 4 years since we've gone through this. Is a lot of our patients, once they get to a regular routine, are like, I'm not taking a lot of these antidepressants anymore. I'm not having to take a lot of the medicine that I was having to take to feel really good. And I think those two run together, right? You start better, so we're getting a lot better hormone function, healing, thought, memory, brain consolidation, brain health. And then, that in turn improves our sleep and our decision making the next day. And now we've got this really beautiful, positive, compounding health loop in practice that just starts to grow and grow. And now maybe I can exercise and make better diet decisions.
It becomes
So you mentioned start small and build. What was the third one on change?
So the second one is flexible.
Flexible.
Right? So you could realize, oh my God, I haven't done it, so I'll do it at 8 at night. Whatever, anytime. You can do it in the morning, get it all done, whatever. And then I noticed when I was tracking, and we can talk about tracking, because I've a couple times on the tracking, and I looked at my calendar and I was like, it's not perfectly consistent. Something is missing. Then I got, what is her name? I don't even know. Is she from, where is it? I think it's probably in the other room right now, or is it down here somewhere? This is like one of those moments where I just got lucky. It's like I had really exhausted the literature, and somehow the book How to Change by this woman from the Wharton School came in, and she did like a whole book on just different studies and whatnot. And then she came on this little chapter called Cash Commitment. You ever heard of them?
I have not.
Oh, it's funny because there's not a lot in the book about it, but
is
where
it Katie Milkman? That sound familiar?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. For those listening, Katie Milkman, How to Change. Anyway, sorry.
And this is actually like a smaller part. In fact, I sort of laughed because at the end of the book, you can tell she almost laments that some of the companies that like, so folks are like, I have no idea what Nick is talking about. Caps commitment devices literally are a company or a third party who goes, oh, okay, Derek, you have these 5 goals. And okay, what are you going to give us? Oh, you're going to give us the $15,000 in that savings account that you have. And if you don't hit those 5 by January 1st, we keep all 15,000. She tells some great stories. She shows some big institutional stories where they've used it like on banks in South America and all stuff. The effectiveness so clearly blew out everything else, Doc, that I was like, I gotta figure out how. And then of course I do a little more research and I start thinking about it, and it's like, and I have to, and I'm working on writing this up as a second smaller book, is like our brains will go to insane lengths to avoid pain.
Yeah.
Even though we're talking about pain and we're in pain all the time and stuff, like we're trying to desperately always be out of pain. We will do anything to get out of pain. So I set up with a person who I trusted and respected, picked a dollar amount that I knew if I missed 2 days of doing this routine, I have to tell her, and then I got to send her the $50. First couple weeks, I was good. Just the idea of it was like, that's not me. It ain't gonna happen. And then one Wednesday I missed, and then one Thursday I missed, and I was like, shit. So I sent her the email, got her Cash App, and then for 2 months straight, I never missed a day. And quite frankly, from that one time that burned me, you asked like kind of what happened. Well, I kept using these little mini plans and evolving them, right? So
Yeah.
like, I know I saw on your side you guys have talked about mindfulness meditation, right? Okay, that was like, I did it. First of all, I was going into monasteries when I was 17 years old. Like I've had 20 years of it, but the research is so insane. You can basically just pick a topic, combine it with meditation, throw it into Google Scholar, and someone is like, "Oh yeah, totally." Meditation ends up helping it somehow. It's like magical. It's like sleep, So like whatever the activities were over time using that system, eventually to what we were just talking about, they become habit, and now I'm not having to put any effort into doing it, and then I could load in another one. And so
Yeah.
again, this is where people say, "How are you holistic?" And I'm like, I've spent so much time with Eastern religion and philosophy and practices that I sort of accidentally gear my sleep and burnout plans to be hyper layered. So like I have this goddess Durga, who's the first goddess ever in Hinduism, 4,000 years old. You've seen her before. She has tons of hands with it has like tools and weapons in every single hand. And same in Buddhism. There's the eightfold path. So to get out of a crappy life, there's 8 different inroads that you need to take that are all distinctly different to get you there. So I was sort of, when I developed the methodology, I wasn't realizing that like, oh, I'm just sort of recapitulating the influence I had from Eastern traditions to layer like crazy. And I'll get a client once in a while who, like 3 weeks later or, the 4 week mark, they'll admit like, well, I haven't been the third thing of the 3 that we came up with. Should I do it? And then they get anxious and desperate because things have not been going well. But basically what happened is that I layered enough of these healthy ideas and beliefs and thoughts, activities, physical and mental. And then like I told you, I kept upgrading that bedroom like crazy. And then sort of like a ghost that realized it had no air to breathe, I just kind of walked out of it, like walking out of the prison gates. There was no crazy moment. There was no snap. There was no pop. There was no day I woke up and realized. No, I just ethereally just sort of walked out of it, and it dissipated and left and was gone.
It's fascinating to hear you say that. So I've been we have, my family functions really well on low sleep. And so I never really felt like I had a sleep issue because I always had great energy. I could sleep 5 hours, I could sleep 4.5 hours and come out and be like, I feel fantastic. And I think this was a problem, to be honest. About a decade ago, I realized I'm only averaging like maybe 5.5 hours if I'm lucky. And you start reading all the research, and it says like, look, you're going to have a high risk of dementia, a high risk of cancer, a high risk of Alzheimer's, all these issues. And it kind of scared me. And I was like, I need to at least hit 7 to 7.5. That was my goal.
See, isn't it? You said you were like, it scared me.
Yeah.
Like you perceived pain,
Right.
and suddenly you were like, okay, I'm ready to
Let
whip
me
and do
go.
some changes.
And when I hear you say that, like that's almost exactly what the process I went through was. I
Tell
started
me about
like
it.
trying to create little small habits.
Mm-hmm.
I was at a conference and they talked about sunrise as like start there. We talked about that earlier. And I started trying to make that a habit. Like, let me get there. And then, started changing, like creating a nighttime routine, like, okay, you know, this has been at 10 p.m. Let me at least start trying to get ready for bed and don't
Yep.
just wait until I get tired, like set a sleep timer. And then started upgrading my environment. And this all like started to kind of mold and stack and stuff. And eventually I got to where it's like, it was something that I just did. Like it all just makes sense and it's easy.
And did the
And I don't
number
think about
of your
doing
total
it at
hours
all. It
go
all
up?
just happens. Yeah, I would say I average 7 now. Great day, I'm
That's perfect.
probably at 8. If I get less than 7, it doesn't still track my sleep about, let's say, a couple weeks a quarter now. And you mentioned how you kind of change sides on that a little bit. I am exactly the same. I think when we're going through change, I want my people to track their sleep because I don't know how much your things have affected it. I think just on a day-to-day basis, once we've gotten our habits and we feel really good about it, then it kind of becomes a thing. I'm like, well, if you're not changing anything and everything is going well, I am with people saying it's not. I take the Aura ring off, take the Whoop off, whatever it is. I don't necessarily need to be tracking it. I feel good about where I'm at in this area of my life. But during the change process, I like to see what things are moving the needle. What's your tracking
So
kind of
I
philosophy?
was you like from the get go. I was tracking like crazy, like everything, and for the most part, it's a pretty effective thing is to track. But this dovetails back to our conversation where we touched into anxiety and depression. You get someone who's a little high anxiety and is a little obsessive, and you have them tracking their sleep for the first time with a tracker that's like not that great, and you're a week in and the tracker's given them a night where it said they never slept. It's given them a night where it gave them all this other information, and it sort of unravels them. So I try to gauge the person. So like the guy I'm working with now, ironically, even though basically some of our work with him is like good to better, right? Like that's where we're going. We're not tracking anything. I think the thing I might turn around with him at some point, but I don't even know. Like I like whipped up, and it's not done, but I whipped up a version of a burnout training that I like fast tracked him on. And when we met like 2 weeks after our first like super mega session together, he just like wouldn't stop smiling and shutting up about the little things that he took from the burnout stuff. And I was like, originally I was thinking that we would use heart rate variability as his like metric. So maybe that might be where I go in the future, which is we're not going to measure everything. It sounds like for you, Derek, X is the issue. Let's look up trackers that can track that effectively. And I was just finishing up a newsletter that's not going to come out for a while about an incredible sleep product called the Bia Sleep Mask. It hasn't hit the market yet, and it already has blown my mind. But like its tracking has sensors, literally. It's not, as I put in the article, it's not an app on your phone with a microphone that a sound that your air conditioner made at 2:30 and thought that you woke up. Like some of these trackers can't really track, like, and they're paid monthly subscriptions for these things,
Mhm.
that people are wasting their money on. So I think maybe in the future I would kind of more figure out and look at, like, say with this guy, when we get to the end and we go, okay, cool, this was your objective. You have these three objectives. We can't really measure this one, but we could measure these two. It's going to cost you X amount of money. Do you really want to do it or not? I
Yeah.
think that's something. But I think I would take it on a case by case basis now in the future because of that.
Do you have you might hate this question. Do you have some that you like and some that we don't have to do a hate list, but If somebody's listening to this and they say like, I want to get this under control, I feel like I am motivated by tracking. Do you have a couple of sleep trackers that you recommend?
I'm still testing them.
Okay.
I'm still playing around like the Fitbit right now for the first time. It's a little, yeah, actually, it's significantly more accurate than a huge boatload of these smart fitness trackers that you can get for watches on Amazon.
Yeah.
I ran through those with different clients. I was like, "Oh, just pick this up. It's like $25." And it was terrible and it caused problems. This one actually was able to do some pretty good stuff. So I don't. I mean, I think like, if you're like money's not an issue, then I don't think that there's anything other than the Aura Ring that's going to give you that robust amount of metrics and present it to you in a way that's like human and digestible. I don't know if you've looked at a Whoop before, but people tell me that that's like a little overwhelming.
I haven't looked at the reports from it, but I've had a lot of people who have gone away from it, which kind of tells me like they're not getting usable information.
Yeah, it's the
Somebody's
impression.
listening to this and they're like, no, no, no. But that's just
I think if you're like
small
wicked,
selection
wicked,
size.
wicked into it, and you can know. But the impression I got was that it's like this insane amount of information that it's giving you. In fact, one of my early reviews on Amazon for Sleep Fitness, the book, the guy was like, "Well, I'm glad I read this book. I finally know what the heck my Whoop is telling me." And I didn't even know what a Whoop was. I had to look it up, and I was like, "Oh, this is $300 and something or more. I think just for the band itself, you know."
Nick, I'm gonna roll through some some quick hitters. We got a bunch of really good questions on when we put out that we were doing this podcast, the initial time. So, what's his top recommendations for sleep environment? So we've talked about this to some degree already, but what's your answer to that?
I think you always have to start with your bed, right? Especially if we're thinking about pain, is like, and you can do it in either of two ways. One, if I could go back, I would get a sleep number mattress. So right away, like they're not terribly priced, and they can do exactly what your chili pad can do automatically for you. So it's like dream, awesome. The second thing that I did, and I tell some people, is like, hey, if you don't have $5,000 just to drop on an insane mattress, get a crappy mattress and get an insane mattress topper. So I have an insane mattress and an insane mattress topper. So I feel pretty good. But yeah, I think that you start with the bed, right? Maybe you try a topper, then you try sheets, then try some other sheets, and then sheets. I rotate between like 2 or 3, and you'll be surprised. Like some crappy ones I got off Amazon, they're great. The ones from this specialized company, it's like, you will sleep amazing. They're like kind of okay, like you kind of feel your way there.
Yeah.
But I think I would say mattress topper, and then start adding and adding and adding. So if whoever asked that question, if they actually tune into this one, contact me through the links that he posts, and I'll send you the list of like, here's all the things that you would over time just upgrade like over and over until you finally have a bedroom that you're just like, first of all, the only thing I do in here is sleep.
Yeah.
Right. So for some folks, like you need to, if you have sleep problems, I should say that, which is a lot of us, you got to get the desk out. You have to really recondition your brain and body. So like, I don't like to give people rules, but one of the rules that I give, and this is another one of those ones where I just happened to give it to this woman that does work on LinkedIn that I met, and then checked in with her like way later. And I told her, I said, no suffering in bed. I don't care what time it is. I don't care when it is. You look at the clock and you're like, oh my God, it's 2:30. Get up and get out. So I think part of that transformational process, that you went through, that I've been through, part of it is reconditioning the bedroom. I've asked several people, like, so tell me, when you walk down the hallway and you pass your bedroom and you just walk by and you kind of look in and as you go, do you have the thought, that's the place that I suffer? And they're like, yeah, I do. So I love the question.
Yeah.
And I would just say, start with the mattress and then stop until you run out of money.
Like I think of them like, when I see my bedroom, we don't spend all the time in the bedroom like during the day. It's
gone.
And that's it. But I think of that as my sanctuary. Like it's, the bed, like again, when the bed's cold, like the color in there is like just deep blue color. We have no lights in there. We don't have a TV in the bedroom. Like I pass by, I'm like, that's the That's the little saying.
Yeah.
What about
I think
sleep supplements?
that's what I tell people. Is like,
Create that.
in the environment category, you want to take it way beyond minimum effective. You want to go overly done and maximized to the ridiculous.
Love it.
I think, and then when in terms of like activities and your thoughts and your own education around sleep, minimum effective. Learn just what you need to know to get out of there.
What about sleep supplements? We got a million questions on sleep supplements, starting with melatonin.
Yeah. So in the book, I throw it under the bus.
I saw.
Yeah. And I might have revised part of that due to some recent research. And this was one actually piece I was going to bring up around this controversial idea that I had. But it sounds like for people who have chronic pain, their second deep sleep phase, the REM sleep, typically gets beaten up. And so melatonin in recent research, and just like I think it was yesterday, I printed out another one. They're starting to be like, this seems to make REM sleep have a little more continuity and last a little bit longer. So I'm not totally wrong in bashing melatonin, because a lot of us, and even I've met several psychiatrists who are like, oh, you haven't tried melatonin? And this is the thing, folks. Melatonin does not help you fall asleep, and it doesn't keep you asleep. And that is what people have mistakenly thought that it does for a very, very long time. And it's like, it doesn't do that. In fact, I've done this with several people where they're like, yeah, they have terrible sleep problems. And they're like, yeah, and I take 8 milligrams of melatonin every night. I was like, Rob, I'm going to save you $18.99 a month. Guess what? Your body makes it.
Yeah.
When the sun goes down, your body makes it. I think one of the other products that I thought for pain, should I try to bring it over here? Because I got lucky. My folks were like, we have to give you a Christmas present years ago. And they were like, it's like a link to like some weighted blankets. So I'd say after the mattress, for pain people, after the mattress, the weighted blanket is awesome. And so I didn't know they were going to get me this one. I have a couple. Let me see if I can pull. I literally, like I said, I brought like all these products for you to see. This thing right here is enormous and weighs tons and it's beautiful. And I think it was I think it was the Sleep Foundation that did like a top list, and I sent them that email. And then when the box came, I was like, oh my God, I have the best weighted blanket in the world. And like,
what is it?
Every guest that comes over, I don't even know what the name is. But I think if you just search for braided weighted rugs, pretty quick you'll be there. You'll find one.
I like that. I like that a lot.
It's pretty sweet. One of the rare things about it that I later figured out was awesome. I was just telling my mom this the other day. We've talked in this episode about getting a weighted blanket's going to heat you up. The sweet thing about this one is it's braided.
Yeah, it's got holes all over.
So like I told her, I was like,
that's always why I haven't used one.
Yeah, I was like last week there was like 2 or 3 nights where instead of using any of the other sheets or anything, I just slept under that because I like the weight. And also they've done research on this, and guess what? Weighted blankets also instigate a release of melatonin. So for people to be jacking up melatonin for weird reasons, it makes no sense. But if you said I have issues with REM sleep, I might listen to you and be like, we probably add that into a strategy for you.
What about magnesium? Let's talk about magnesium for a second.
You need to email me and be like, Nick, send me the shredding of magnesium. I can't remember the guy's name, but this big study came out, and I'm amazed it got published. They were basically like, oh, it did this on this metric for the Oura Ring, and it did this and this and this. And this, like, he crushed it with this article. He did a very nice introduction, and then he proceeds to be like, but it failed to do anything or cause problems on 75% of the rest of these metrics. And it was about, I can't remember which version of magnesium it was. But at this point, I've seen enough shreddings of magnesium that this little tribe of sleep coaches that I sort of live and belong to internationally, we've all tossed it. None of us use it with clients anymore at all.
For sleep improvement.
Yeah. So just, email me that and I will send you the link to that. And it pretty much shuts the door.
Yeah, that would be an interesting, so for people with nerve pain and muscle pain that we have deficiencies in magnesium, we get a lot of improvement. When you talked about your hamstring,
that might indirectly help your sleep.
Yeah, when you talked about your hamstrings locking up, like my initial thought would be, I'd love to get a blood test and see where you were at from calcium, magnesium, sodium, potassium. There would be something that was getting just completely destroyed while you weren't sleeping.
Right.
And so in those situations, like at least we see from the pain and muscle perspective, the magnesium, we use a nanoform that goes like right into the cells. So not like magnesium citrate or any of those things, but from a sleep directed perspective, I'm glad. Interesting to hear that anyway.
Well, I think that what one of the when I all this stuff, especially around pain, where let's say if you were a client and you're like, I have chronic pain, what's the best thing we can do? It would be like to max the bejesus out of that first deep sleep, slow wave delta phase. And so before we got on, I came up with a version of what it would be, and like one of them is walking. Why? Because it's got a triple sleep impact, and one of it is just like the magnesium thing, right? It reduces pain and pain perception. Okay, what does that do? It makes it a hell of a lot easier to fall asleep,
Yeah.
right? So sometimes it's about using indirect things. I used to tell people like this all the time. I'm like, I have no direct solutions for you. All I have is we're going to do things that the side effects over time will become so cumulative and overbearing that whatever that issue is, it will fall and disappear and run away. Like that's what happened. But it's all just side effects of other things. So I think that's totally fine.
Are there sleep supplements that you like that seem to be quite effective at moving the needle?
No. I
All
spent years I
individualized.
spent years swallowing everything that you could buy. I remember the time I had and I'm not saying that dark cherry juice doesn't produce melatonin, but I just remember my mom looking at me and like, Nick, that's a lot of pills, you know, and I was just like swallowing them like crazy. I spent 6 years testing products, man. And literally, this person was like, "You have a closet. We need to start like creating a database." I got to around 81, Derek, and realized
Oh,
I'm gonna get to 100, and I'll be the worst affiliate marketer ever because I have failed. And I realized what I need to do is what I did with the book is turn around and go, okay, how do we like narrow the focus? What are like the 10 to 15 products that did work? So I just started to launch an Instagram channel, and that Instagram channel will only be a release of like a month or so of a product.
love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny that you say that because when I look at the people that we've worked with, this is why I'm such a big fan of testing and doing like these full like hormone and micronutrient panels. Because when I think of things that have helped some patients, when you talked about how you didn't have a lot of correlation, I've had patients that, changing their glutathione levels was a game changer. Now, glutathione's not recommended as a sleep supplement per se, it's an antioxidant, but giving them that, we see this crazy change. And then I've had other patients where getting their sodium levels into normal ranges, this sounds crazy, help their nervous system function better and improves their sleep. And then, we've had patients who are really low in magnesium and then patients who are really low in vitamin D. So it's like testing becomes really powerful that you're doing the right thing for you so that your hormone cascade, your system, your micronutrient panel, your vitamin panel is in a good place so your body can go through these systems normally.
You've just done the cellular reflection of what I came to, which is most of this is a custom job.
Yeah.
Like I tell people, like the same activities might exist client to client, but where we start and what how we things is totally a custom job.
As people fine tune this and they try and get this like quote unquote like I don't want to say perfect night's sleep because I know you're going to be like, no, don't worry about perfect. But as they try and get there, what did we miss? What do they need to add in? What do they need to know as they get deeper into optimizing their sleep?
Well, we hit on some pretty good ones. So, like, just to give people the premise of the book, back to the anxiety and depression part, my dad was like, "You should write a book about this." And I was like, "Who would want to read about this?" And he's like, "There might be other people." That's when I then found out, like, oh my God, there's over 35% of my like American citizens are not sleeping well. Like in Australia, it's over 40. It's an epidemic. Oh my God. Okay, fine. I'll get motivated to go. Well, my first trek out, Derek, was like the Lord of the Rings with sleep, anxiety, and depression because you couldn't untangle them. It was so hard. And when my friend died at 40, I was like, holy smokes, I failed him. Like, I didn't get something in front of him in time. And so I just did a simple reverse sort of, again, like I say, like I'm holistic. I come from a Christian background. I was like, what if God came and said, hey, Nick, you did a great job. You're good. I'm gonna have you out in like a week, so wrap up. I was like, what would be like the 10 things that I would suck out of 6 years to give to my friends, family, and peers that mattered about sleep? And so that's how I structured the book. So I think one of the things that you hit, that I had a sleep technologist who, man, he's brilliant. He could kill both of us about sleep knowledge. Done 20 plus years. He's unbelievable. His favorite chapter is, I think, is number 8. It's called "Fix Night with Day," and I think that's something that we hit early, and I think that's a big one for people to go. I call it like people like are sleep stupid, meaning like they live in the world from before where they're like, oh yeah, I know about sleep, and it's like, but do you really? Did you like the thing we've talked about today? Like, did you know that if you got your butt out into the sun in the morning, that would do multiple biologically, chemically related and trackable things that would make you sleep better at night, which would increase your deep sleep, which would mean less pain? Probably not. Probably not. So that's a big one. Let me just run through here. You've done stuff on mindfulness meditation. I've got a chapter in there that's just mind blowing. You also mentioned the thing about my chapter 6 is about going for perfect as a trap. You know, you really like, I've seen people just, it sometimes happens in the beginning. They'll be like, they'll like set and they're like ready to go, and they'll suddenly turn and be like, Nick, in 3 weeks, I'm the host of a party that's supposed to go till like 6 in the morning. I won't be able to do this. And I'm like, and I give them the whole analogy. Like, what if you just missed a workout? What would happen? And they're like, I'd be fine. I'd be like, you're going to be totally fine. So that's there. I think one that's missing that might be a little weird for people, and I think number 2, I titled it Introduce a Little Anarchy from the Joker from the Dark Knight. But it's a chapter about custom designs and custom solutions. I think, and this is one that anyone listening, if you want the chapter, I'm happy to send it to you as a taster of the book. It's called We Were Designed to Stay Awake for a few days, something like that. I can't even remember my own chapters. Number 3, the body is designed to stay awake, and so this is one that is aimed at anxiety, because I have people who are like, they're freaking out. And I'm like, listen, you've been designed either by evolution and being in tribes around the fire, protecting the food at night, and me and Derek and the guys, we did 3 nights post and then we shifted. And over time, we built the ability. It doesn't feel great to stay awake for 2 nights. It's not good. You can go 3 nights, but my guess is sleep pressure will finally nail you. But you do have the capability. Or if you believe in God, God designed you to be able to do it. You can do it. We have shift workers who work at night in hospitals. And so I think that's part of a mind shift change, so that when you are at 2 in the morning and you're looking at the clock, which you shouldn't be, and you're starting to panic, you remind yourself like, oh my God, I was built this way. Like, I'm made this way, and to really take that in, So I think that's one of the only things that didn't come up that was sort of ideological, that
I,
hits the anxiety spot.
I'm
And
glad you
I
brought that
literally had
up.
a lady who I literally was like, the first thing we're going to do is I'm going to tell you about the fact that you're designed to stay, like literally. And then I was like, once you understand it, you're going to start calming down. And then she started calming down, which made it easier to go to sleep. And then she was an older woman, and then was like, we need to have you go to sleep earlier. And it was just easy. Everything got easier once
I
they accepted that.
tried to study the idea of sleep banking. I've heard that starting to get talked about a bit more over the last probably like 2 years.
Hmm.
And it's hard for me to find research on it where they actually show like if you have an uptick in sleep leading up to a stressful or sleep deprived time, that you can navigate that much better. But if I look at like what you're talking about, like history, we know that that happened. Like we know that they would go out on hunts and like basically not sleep very well, and then we'd kill,
Yep.
and we'd come back and we'd eat and stuff, and then people, they'd sleep 10 hours a night and they'd recover and rest up and, then, get ready to go back out and do it again. And so I was like, it would make perfect sense that we can kind of, bank our sleep to a degree where we can kind of get a lot of sleep and almost like preserve energy and get the body in this really good state so that it could navigate 2 or 3 nights in a row of kind of decreased, sleep or rest without negatively affecting our, energy, our reaction time, our focus, and then, do it again, obviously within reason. What's your the banking idea?
Of what little I've seen is kind of corroborates what you're saying, is that the research isn't, there's not a lot there, but what's there recently has been poo-pooed and been like, you can't compensate for.
Yeah.
I've had it multiple times where I'm like, oh, I had terrible sleep for that period of time. So I think during that 2.5 years, I had a 10-day stretch where I never slept. That was almost worse than the 17-day. And there was another one that was like really long too. But then I would get like a 13-hour sleep. And my REM would be like 3.5 hours, and my deep sleep would be 3.5 hours. And boy, I was good. Like
Yeah.
once I got out of bed, I was like, I feel totally like a normal human being. Like I'm good.
Yeah.
So what research I have seen lately is like, you can't do it. It's a myth. You can't wait till the weekend and then catch up on the sleep that you missed during the week. What you can't do is you can't sleep crappy for most of the week every week.
Yeah.
Like that's not gonna work. So that might be getting at some of that. Ooh, and by the way, we need to head back for 1 second back to the supplement thing.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you've seen this, but I saw it a while ago, and then I saw it when I was prepping for our show. Is there's some concern around anti-inflammatory pain relievers and the disruption of sleep. I don't know the terms well enough when I was looking at the research to be able to kick them back out to you, but anyone listening wouldn't give a crap anyways because they sound like other foreign language. But I did see another round of research come up that it was hitting on that. So that's something where I would say we don't know the answer, but boy, as pain people, we're dropping painkillers all the time. Especially we're like, oh my God, if I take a painkiller before I go to bed at night, I'll totally be able to sleep better. And it's like, actually, early research is not really supporting that. So I would say to a person who has pain and who's been doing that, experiment,
Yeah.
cut down, and then cut out for 2 to 4 weeks and just see. That might be helpful. But yeah, I wanted to make sure we got that one in there because I'm like, oh my God, a lot of pain people are taking
This
non.
is not research. I'll tell you all that. Y'all know how much I love research. But one of the things that I think when we switch somebody off of like prescription anti-inflammatories to more of the kind of natural supplementation anti-inflammatory effects, getting them on the right compounds to balance some things that still reduce inflammation. This is your omega-3s. This is your like really elite turmeric type of compounds.
Yep.
We could get into glutathione. I would throw that in there. Switching them over, they get equivalent pain relief. And some of the research says that they get better long-term effects from making that switch off of the prescription anti-inflammatories. And my big belief is that they are not disrupting some of these sleep patterns that they get on a prescription anti-inflammatory. And that's why we're getting similar anti-inflammatory effects in the body. But with the supplementation, you get better sleep and you're getting better sleep cycles. And so that's why those outperform the prescription drugs. Again, this is just what we see in our patients. So
we should work together because again, what you've just done is you've done what I love to do with anyone's sleep plan is make sure it compounds, right? So what you just did was like you cleaned up one, which improved it. And then what did you just do, which we should hit on before we close out, is you just made it so that the greatest pain killer in the world, healthy sleep, could be effective, right? Like you just opened the door for that thing to like swing open. And I'd say like one of the things that is going on now that I think is what I would call irrational excitement is there's research that's come out now and it's been funded and a lot of it's in Australia because the sleep's bad. But it's basically like before we were like, oh, the pain is making the sleep bad. And now these like nascent researchers are like, wow, we think that sleep is causing the pain or that can solve the pain. And I just want to say to people, like, slow down. Like, really think about it. It's both. It's both. It's probably different for every person and every ailment. And so, like, when I read the end, I was like, you know what? And I was this one study, and I was like, oh, I really like that they put this in the end. They were like, the best solution is to manage both.
Yeah.
That if you have chronic or acute pain, you should be working with someone with pain management. And if you have problems with sleeping at the same time, you should be working on getting your sleep fitness up and ratchet it up. You should be doing both. And like this whole, I'm just concerned that like little shift is going to get there. You can tell there's this excitement that like sleep is going to solve we can treat, literally the language is that we'll treat pain with sleep. And I'm like, yeah, I'm a sleep coach. So you would think I'd be like, yeah, hell yeah, best thing ever. And I'm like, no, slow down there. Like just like that last example you gave, sleep didn't become totally the effective weapon it can be until you got them on anti-inflammatories that were sustainable and healthy.
Yeah. Yeah. So powerful, man. Nick, this is awesome conversation, man.
Yeah.
Love it.
Collect questions and we'll do another one some other time.
Absolutely. I think everybody hit us up. Where can people find you? Where can they hit you up? Where can they ask you questions? How do they find the book? Everywhere that books are found online. What's the answers? Get you.
Simple answer. So one, I'm super generous, so you can send questions to me and I will answer you. First is I work with a small amount of people every 6 months individually. I always give a person a free consult, and it always lasts longer than 30 minutes. So that is always there for you just to be like, what are my options? And like, where am I at? One time I spent a couple hours with a guy where I was like, you just need the right products. And we just went through the whole products and he didn't become a client. But every client I have them read, and one of them is mine. And one of the reasons is because it saves them a lot of time. It clears up some of that old ideology about sleep and cleans it up where you're like, oh, okay, that's clear. And then it also gives you some of those practical things that you can start implementing, like walking. Walking's like crazy. I think the thing I brought in here was like it had like 3 triple sleep impacts, and some of it, like earlier we were talking about, some of them are indirect, but for someone with pain, I was like, what's an exercise that's low compound? So it was like sleep. I mean, if you can swim, that's like on steroids. So I always have people read that first, no matter what. So I'd say if you're interested in working with me in any way, shape, or form, which could be like, I either work with someone for like 3 sessions where I'm like, okay, I think we can sort of like wrap this up, or a 6-week thing where we're meeting once a week for 6 weeks and we get you going. So if you just go on Amazon and you just go type in sleep fitness, you will find me there. It is there. And then my website was sort of annoying, and so I kind of just threw it out. So the best place to find me is on LinkedIn. So I think if you're Sleep Fitness or Nick Stewart on LinkedIn, you will find me.
Okay.
And you can
And they would do a message if they're
Yeah.
interested in setting up a little consult. Awesome.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, absolutely. I've had people just like send me a question. Like the guy the other day was like, I always wake up in the morning with like really bad indigestion. So I was just like, I whipped him out like, here's 3 things that you could do, and here's 3 things you could take away. Message me in 4 weeks and let me know how you're doing.
Yeah.
So it could be as simple as that.
Nick, we ask all of our guests who come on here, if there's one thing somebody listening to this can do to improve their health today, what would that one thing be?
That is like the most difficult question ever because it's different for every person. But I mean, I think that I'd have to lean towards the like get outside and move. I mean, I think that's the big one.
I like it. I like it.
The second thing is that, and this might be with the burnout stuff a little bit, is that first of all, I'm collecting articles all the time. This is a 27-year-old girl after 4 months of working for Ernst & Young, and she's died. There's a 35-year-old kid working for Wells Fargo. He was working over 100 hours. He's died. That people have gone way too far, and they think that the working mind and being really focused and like adamant and on all the time, that's productive and that's work. And that when you're like in a rested state, like the burnout training, we talk about rest, restoration, and recharge. But the rest part is passive. So like I would say to people, I've been amazed by, and sort of funny, like clients who will come back and they're just like, oh yeah, like I'll just like lie there and not move because I'll teach them. I'm like, so do you think that when you're not doing work or whatever, that your mind isn't active? And they're like, yeah, it's not really doing anything. And I'm like, this is how I know you're sleep stupid because the mind is so insanely active. You're not giving it an opportunity to actually do a lot of the great work that it does. There's a great book called Rest that documents like every famous person. They worked like Darwin worked 4 hours, but he got most of his like other time there. So I would say just like one, get out and be active is one thing, but two, make sure you're taking rest periods and just let your mind wander. Like people always are like, "Oh, Nick's the guy who teaches meditation corporations for the workplace," and I'm like, I actually, that's a specific thing, and it has its own value. But there's also value in just taking a break, either every half an hour, 60 minutes, or 90 minutes for 10 minutes, not with your phone. Do not consume your phone. Go outside or lie down on the couch just for 10 minutes. Do that a few times a day. Trust me when I tell you, you'll be blown away by A, how many ideas some problems you solved, but two, how much healthier you're getting. And because we're at the point where I think someone just the other day, we've passed the time where people said, "Oh, you can't work so hard that you die." And it's like, no, you can now. Like this is a very real thing for people. It's very dangerous. And that's where the sleep part comes in because I'm like, well, actually, if we crank your sleep up multiple notches, you can get to a place where it's sort of like I'll just give you this analogy. It's sort of like smart investment, right? When you're retired, let's pretend that Ryan's retired on $10,000, right? He's supposed to live off the interest and returns of that $10,000. He's not supposed to dip into it. So what I found in working with people is that we would get to a place with their sleep that was consistent enough that they would go about the day and use it, right? And then go to sleep and fill the tank back up. But once it became months, some of them started just like in retirement. They would get $1,000 of interest, let's say, on Monday, but they'd only use 700 units of physical, mental energy during the day. And so when they went to sleep, they docked an extra 300 units of energy. So I would say open your mind about what's possible for yourself in terms of what type of capacity you can have for energy, despite the fact we live in corporate environments that are like Wells Fargo was like, well, we had a rule that said you can't work more than it was like 80 hours or something. I was like, 80 hours? Like that's crazy, you know? Yeah, and I think last parting words would be that one thing I didn't know that I wish I did during that process is that there's weird people like me and there's non-weird people like me who are much more traditional, who you can jump on LinkedIn and just do a search for sleep coach and look through them and interview them, you know, and see who's right for you. I didn't know there was all these alternative resources of people who had on the ground experience of things, you know.
Yeah.
When I work with someone, one of the first things I tell them, Derek, is I want you to know one, and I tell them really quickly, I didn't sleep for 17 nights. I had insomnia for 2.5 years. That usually makes them go like, oh damn, like I don't have it that bad. But the second thing I tell them is like, there's nothing you can tell me that's gonna scare me, you know? And it's okay if you're having the problem. So I find a lot of men have a hard time sharing and being like, I'm having this issue with sleep. So I would just say, be vulnerable, get out there, and just like be okay with wanting more for yourself. It sounds weird, but what's possible for you is, I think, greater than you might even know, you know?
So good, Nick. Thank you. Really enjoyed this, ladies and gentlemen. The passionate, the caring, and powerful Nick Stewart. Thank you, man.
Dude, it was awesome. We'll do it again.